Imagine a world where wars aren't fought with tanks and guns, but with powerful speeches and hashtags. That's America's cool new strategy, using words as weapons instead of the traditional kind. One day, they're buddies with a country, and the next, wham! Social media showdown, trust shattered into pieces, ceasefires, more like news cycle clickbait. Every battle feels like a reality show, and every soldier is like a superhero behind a keyboard. It's a bit messy, a tad dramatic, and it's definitely leaving some serious marks on the global stage. So get ready, grab your snack, maybe a peace treaty, and enjoy the show as America takes on the world in an epic battle. Colonel Douglas Macgregor recently spilled the beans on how the U.S. government is playing political games with wars worldwide, and it's causing quite a stir. According to him, the U.S. isn't fighting for noble reasons, but has a hidden agenda to take down Russia, leaving Europeans and Westerners out of the loop. He also spilled the beans on what's coming next, wondering how he reached this bold conclusion and what it means for the U.S. Let's dive in. Colonel Douglas Macgregor recently shared insights on upcoming events in a recent interview. As a retired U.S. Army officer and military analyst, Macgregor responded to several questions, starting with the risks of the U.S. spending a whopping $886 billion on defense, a sum recently greenlit by the House of Representatives. This budget surpasses the combined budgets of the next 12 countries, including major powers like Russia, China, and Great Britain, and covers the upkeep of over 900 foreign military bases. When asked if this spending is just routine, Macgregor emphatically asserted that it's a runaway train benefiting individuals within the Washington establishment. He explained that the excessive spending is deeply rooted in Washington's culture, and he believes change won't happen until the U.S. faces an inevitable financial crunch. Macgregor highlighted the warnings from Nassim Taleb and others about an impending financial crisis that could halt the spending spree. Despite Macgregor's acknowledgement that change is unlikely until the U.S. hits financial trouble, he stressed the deeply ingrained nature of the issue within the Washington community. Real change, he suggested, may only occur when the country faces financial hardship. When asked for advice as the Secretary of Defense, he highlighted the pressing need for a new national military strategy, tailored for today's challenges, drawing parallels to the influential NSC 68. This document, responsible for shifting the containment strategy to a more militarized approach, significantly shaped the current state of the United States. Emphasizing the importance of a revamped national security strategy, he insisted on legislation to enshrine the principle that the U.S. won't deploy military force beyond its borders unless faced with a direct attack. The second key priority he proposed is a strong focus on Western Hemispheric defense, ensuring the security of borders, the country, and coastal waters. In addition to these priorities, he suggested a critical review of alliance commitments, recognizing that the U.S. can no longer afford nor require all existing agreements. Acknowledging the substantial changes in the world since the agreement's inception, he urged a reconsideration of the nation's stance. To overhaul the military structure, he recommended a reduction in regional unified commands, advocating for the consolidation of functional commands into a more streamlined system. He further proposed resizing the national defense establishment to align with fiscal needs, urging a comprehensive reevaluation of the definition of national security. The speaker ardently argued against the prevailing emphasis on global military dominance, asserting its redundancy and counterproductive nature. Instead, he advocated for a more pragmatic approach that addresses the country's actual needs and challenges, steering away from unnecessary confrontations and prioritizing a defensive stance. In essence, his advice aimed at reshaping the U.S. military strategy towards a more efficient, fiscally responsible, and defensively focused direction. When asked about the U.S. involvement in conflicts in Africa and Syria, he strongly opposed it, saying a firm no. He explained that anyone familiar with Africa would recognize that what the continent needs least is more military presence in their neighborhoods. He pointed out that Africa faces numerous challenges, and military intervention intervention by the U.S. wouldn't solve them. Drawing a comparison to past colonial powers like the French, British, Portuguese, Spaniards, and Belgians, he emphasized a need for change. He stressed a shift in approach, advocating for doing business with everyone, believing in a free market, protecting markets and citizens, but steering clear of regime change or imposing societal norms on those who don't want or need them. Regarding Syria, he admitted not understanding the U.S. presence there. Assuming it hurt Assad, calling it nonsense, he argued that it's not the U.S.'s territory, and being caught amid conflicts involving the Turks, Kurds, and Iranians over land and power makes the U.S. presence unnecessary. He urged a swift withdrawal from Iraq, where troops and bases are essentially sitting ducks, suggesting that U.S. forces are more needed at home and on its borders than being entangled in foreign conflicts. When asked about the U.S. remaining in NATO, he suggested that the U.S. should inform Europeans that they don't live in Europe, and while the U.S. is willing to support where it makes sense, Europeans need to be their own first responders for defense. He recommended appointing a European as the Supreme Commander of Allied Powers Europe, emphasizing a shift from the U.S.'s military leadership in Europe since 1945. He advised returning to NATO's original defensive principles, avoiding attacks, power projection outside Europe, and starting wars. The U.S., he argued, should announce its departure from being Europe's first responder, asserting that it doesn't make sense, and instead, the U.S. can swiftly send reinforcements with air and naval powers, excluding ground forces. Regarding the president's request for $68 billion for Ukraine, he expressed skepticism about congressional approval despite intense lobbying. When asked about Ukraine's ability to resist Russia without U.S. aid, he estimated a mere 30 days, suggesting a scenario similar to Afghanistan, where leaders hastily flee with money as soon as they realize the U.S. won't provide more cash. He predicted the same outcome for Ukraine, with both the government and the army, stating that once the funds stop, everyone will abandon the ship. When discussing Ukraine's resistance against Russia and its purported role in securing other European nations, the speaker vehemently dismissed such claims as baseless. To illustrate his point, he drew a historical parallel, likening the situation in Eastern Europe and Ukraine to the Romans' approach in the Eastern Mediterranean, concentrating on coastal areas rather than venturing deep into the interior. He argued convincingly that there is no strategic advantage for Russia in invading Ukraine or posing a threat to Eastern Europe, dismissing such notions as absurd. The speaker criticized the United States for unnecessarily provoking Russian intervention, highlighting the flawed assumption that a deal could be reached with the Ukrainians. Delving into the aftermath, the speaker underscored the significant toll on Ukraine, with approximately 500,000 casualties in a remarkably short period. This stark reality challenged the credibility of Ukraine's initial population claim, revealing discrepancies in the country's stated size. The speaker concluded by asserting that the United States' engagement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict primarily serves the interests of an elite class centered around Washington, with no genuine concern for the well-being of Europeans or Westerners. Highlighting the crucial role Ukraine plays for Russia, the speaker drew a comparison, likening it to the importance of specific areas for the United States, such as southern Texas, Mexico, southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, and Southern California. He made it clear that Putin, the Russian president, is unlikely to abandon this strategic viewpoint and might even shift forces towards the West. Furthermore, he pointed out concerns about NATO's perceived decline, describing it as a weakening entity barely holding on. Behind the scenes, the speaker suggested an overall sense of confusion and uncertainty, with no clear path for the involved parties. Using a rhetorical question, he wondered about the practicality of mobilizing armed forces and moving eastward, hinting at a shared reluctance for military engagement, even on the part of the United States. To foster understanding and gather diverse viewpoints, the audience was invited to express their thoughts in the comments section. This call for an open dialogue aimed to encourage a collective exploration of the intricate geopolitical situation. The speaker sought to engage the audience in considering different perspectives on the complex dynamics at play. By prompting a discussion, he hoped to create a space for people to share insights, fostering a more comprehensive understanding of the geopolitical landscape surrounding Ukraine and Russia.